We all know how the famous saying goes: choose a job you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. In my younger years, I was one of those who aspired to achieve what this quote suggests: to find a career you enjoy, and you'll never have to go through unpleasant experiences, including stress. Although this saying was true on certain days, it was not always the case. There have been many instances that work has been the single greatest source of stress in my life. Though not necessarily a positive thing, but I am not alone in this. This sentiment is shared by approximately 42% of Filipino workers, which, according to a 2015 survey, has the highest level of stress in Asia, with work related stress being the major source. But this is not just the story of work stress that I and millions of other employees are experiencing as part of the labor force. To say that the pandemic took a toll on every worker's mental health is an understatement. And to be a manager during this period means bigger responsibilities that goes beyond making sure that we're not just in charge, but we take care of the people in our charge. Noticing many people exhibit signs of stress led me to ask myself, what can I and other managers do? This is the story of us managers and what we do when the going gets tough. Strategies Filipino managers use in managing employee stress. Today's sharing is divided into four parts. First, we'll briefly talk about the phenomenon of work stress and stress management intervention. Then I'll share with you how this study took place and who participated before we move on to talking about the major findings and the results of the study, and how we can relate that to what we already know about stress management and the implications for practice and areas for future research. It is impossible to talk about what managers do to manage work stress without being able to define it. While research is yet to reach a consensus on how work stress should be defined, particularly because of the lack of a unified description of the stress construct itself, we define work stress from two of the most widely accepted definitions. Workplace stress is a global problem that affects workers in both developing countries, with more and more workers reporting stress and its effect on their physical and mental health. Thus, it is not surprising that many researchers attempted to explain it. Four of the most popular models are the JDC, JDR, and ERI model, and the transactional model of work stress, which Cox and Griffiths, where occupational health and safety laws in European countries are largely based upon. Despite the absence of a unified definition of work stress in different models, the literature provides a consistent account of the sources of work stress, wherein workload remains to be the major source of occupational stress in different industries such as healthcare, the academe, and even among management consultants. As work stress research continues to provide data on its prevalence, effect on both person and organizational outcomes, and economic costs, it is not surprising that similar attention has been paid to identifying how to prevent, manage, or reduce stress, commonly referred to in the literature as stress management intervention. While several models have tried to explain the causes and outcomes of work stress, the literature on stress management intervention has not reached this stage yet. In the absence of models to explain how stress management intervention should be designed, authors have made attempts to organize literature on interventions by categorizing them into two major categories: interventions based on approach or based on who the target is. However, studies done on the effectiveness of these interventions may be based on approach or target remain to show conflicting results, paving way to some authors arguing for the need to examine the implementation of stress management interventions instead of its focus on outcomes. Hence, the growing focus on the role managers play in stress management intervention as they hold the key in implementation. Despite the increasing body of research on supervisors' role in stress management, most empirical studies have been exploratory with no attempt to synthesize discovered and overlapping themes into a structured framework. Given the wealth of qualitative studies on this topic, the aim of this study is to fill a gap in the literature by providing a profile of strategies managers use and thereby contributing to theory development of stress management intervention. When the going gets tough, what do managers do to manage employee stress? That was the main question that this study aims to answer. Aside from that, we also asked, do the strategies Filipino managers use differ depending on age, gender, and managerial level, and hypothesized that there would be significant difference with the managerial strategies used based on age, gender, and managerial level. This study followed a descriptive research design with no attempt to hypothesize or explain relationships between interventions or its sources nor outcomes as what is common in literature. Instead, the purpose of this study is to extend the findings of several qualitative studies through a numerical profile of strategies used by managers in managing employee stress. This study was mostly an extension of the qualitative study of Jimison et al., where the authors identified several strategies Australian supervisors use in detecting and managing stress. The target population of this study are Filipino managers and supervisors, and a total of 69 managers participated in the study. Finally, the respondents were mostly middle managers and those coming from the education industry. But what exactly did we ask these managers? Again, our main objective was to create a numerical profile of strategies. So this study used a self-developed questionnaire called Managerial Strategies for Workplace Stress Management. This scale indicates the frequency by which managers use the strategies identified in Jimison et al. Responses are on a 5-point frequency scale, with 1 being the lowest to 5 as the highest. In analyzing the data, we simply compute for the mean score of each item. Results indicate that organizational culture ranked as the highest, suggesting that strategies under this dimension are extremely observed among the managers. On the other hand, strategies under problem identification ranked last. The dimension of organizational culture represents strategies of managers in fostering open communication, collaboration, as well as a positive, fun environment. The second dimension to rank high was prevention, where these are the strategies used by managers in avoiding workplace stress, such as considering the individual needs of employees, managing role expectations, encouraging healthy lifestyle behaviors, and providing opportunities for employee development. In terms of coping assistance, these are the strategies that represent the resources managers provide to their employees in the form of emotional support and connecting employees to organizational programs that foster well-being. Fourth would be execution of the immediate problem, which are strategies that are related to job content. Now, the least frequently used strategies would be the follow-up and evaluation and problem identification. Follow-up and evaluation are strategies that relate to monitoring stress employees. And lastly, the least observed dimension is problem identification, which are strategies that relate to gathering information concerning employee stress. In summary, the findings show that among the 6 dimensions of managerial strategies, those related to organizational culture are among the extremely observed by the managers in the sample. The least observed strategies are those that concentrate on recognizing job stress among employees. Organizational culture and coping assistance are 2 dimensions that represent the strategies extremely observed by the managers in this study. Now, we did not just want to create a numerical profile, but also we wanted to know whether strategies vary depending on age, gender, and managerial level. T-test and ANOVA were used to analyze the data, and in terms of these results, the results of the present study indicate that there's no significant difference, and results were all similar. Looking at the results of this study, where organizational culture ranked highest in terms of managerial strategies, it seems to support the argument that there are still gaps between stress management interventions and work stress models. In the literature, workload remains to be the major source of work stress in different industries, which should be addressed by strategies under the execution of the immediate problem dimension. However, the result of the present study indicates that among the Filipino managers in the study, strategies to address these stressors are not frequently observed compared to the other dimensions, which are organizational culture and prevention. This raises the question of whether workload is not the primary cause of work stress in the companies, or whether it is, but the managers are unable to concentrate on strategies to address it. Looking at the items under organizational culture, these are strategies that are broader in nature and represents general leadership styles as suggested by Jimison et al. This may explain why the managers in the study indicated more frequent use of the strategies under this dimension. In terms of results, suggesting that managerial strategies tend to be similar across different age groups, gender, and managerial level, this suggests that particularly in managerial level, regardless of whether a manager is a supervisor, a middle manager, or part of the top management, managers in this study perceive their role in stress management as not dependent on their position in the organization. With the results, as managers, I recommend we do the following. First, facilitate discussions with individual employees and with larger groups to discuss the sources of work stress. The results show that problem identification ranked last across the 6 dimensions of the scale, with strategy of conducting focused group discussions as the least observed strategy. While the managers in the study seem to frequently conduct individual check-ins and conversations with their employees, these may not be enough. Using this strategy means that the focus is on the individual level of intervention, which focuses on building the capacity of workers to cope up with stress, in contrast to organizational level intervention, where the focus is on improving employee health and well-being through the working conditions they are in. Second is to align the needs and expectations of the employees and manager in terms of implementing intervention. Literature suggests employees may have different perspective of how their managers should address work stress. Hence, it is important for managers to facilitate discussions to align their expectations from that of their employees. Third, in terms of practice, is to introduce capability seminars or resources to help individuals and individual employees cope with stress. While this is more individual in nature, literature has also been consistent in terms of identifying the role of individual employees in managing their own stress. However, as what the results tell us, providing stress management tools and encouraging employees to attend stress management seminars are among the least observed strategies across all items and dimensions. Now, as researchers, the work is just beginning. First, there is a need to re-examine the managerial strategies for workplace management scale. Many potential respondents have turned down participation due to the length of the questionnaire. So it would be a worthy undertaking to study the tool, to subject the tool to subsequent statistical tests to establish construct validity, which may lead to a reduction in the number of questions. Second is to conduct further studies with different levels of analysis and scope. So due to limitations in source access and time constraints, this present study only focused on 5 major industries and have only gathered a small sample. The research on managerial strategies in managing employee stress as an emerging field in research offers exciting opportunities to conduct the study across different industries and larger sample size. As we end this chapter in the story of stress management intervention, let us not stop here, and instead, let us continue to advance what we know about stress management intervention. Let us keep in mind the number of Filipino employees experiencing work stress, not just in 2015, when we reported the highest level of work stress in Asia, but more so now that we are experiencing challenging times. As researchers, let us continue to investigate what managers do when the going gets tough. And as managers, let us continue to do what we can and collaborate with researchers in order to advance our knowledge of this topic. Again, this is Jessica Jaye Ranieses. Thank you for listening.